evening. My name is Will Brown and welcome to the first WordPress Sydney meetup in 2021. Great to have you guys with us. So we thought we'd kick off this meetup just with a little simple title. So we're going to be looking at essential WordPress, well, I put pre-launch checklist, but we're just going to call it a launch checklist. So whenever you're putting your WordPress website live, it's good to have a checklist of things to do. So if you guys are joining us, let us know in the comments where you're joining us from, who you are, what you're doing in life, and that would be great. As well, throughout the talk tonight, it's going to be a really informal, relaxed talk. Drop some questions into the comments, and let me know what you think, and I'll try and circle back to the comments either throughout the presentation or at the end. And if we've got any time left, then we might just do like a general WordPress Q&A. It's just me on my own today. So you've got my voice to suffer through. We'll try and get some more organisers on later on in the year. But thanks so much for your time this evening. And so who have we got online? We've got Future Shop from Marrickville. Oh, I love Marrickville. I used to stay in Dulwich Hill when we first moved to Sydney. A fantastic part of the suburbs there. Jean from the Central Coast. These are some of our regular quickies, WP Quickies viewers. Thanks for joining us in the evening. Louise is from Avalon Beach. Oh, lovely. A nice hot day today. A bit clouding over just now, but yep, I enjoy the beach. I love a good beach holiday. My wife likes to ski and snowboard, and I like to go on the beach. So we're a bit polar opposites from that point of view. Morris from St. Ives, thank you very much for joining us, Morris. Okay, just while people are logging in, I'll give you guys a few minutes just to log in and get ready. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel or like us on Facebook. So today we are broadcasting on the WordPress Sydney Facebook page and the WordPress Sydney YouTube account. I am trying to get LinkedIn, but LinkedIn, they're very selective on who they allow to broadcast. So I'm having a bit of a battle trying to get an online application submitted and approved for that one. So Amanda, hi from the Central Coast. Wendy. Paul from DY, is that one place? I've not heard of that. Awesome. Celine from Manly, lovely in Manly. And Michelle, yep, I am doing very well. Thank you much for asking, Michelle. And again, just while everyone's getting logged in, we'll go through just a few courtesies. So thank you very much. I'll make that a bit bigger for them. Thank you very much for our sponsors. Now, we haven't seen much of our sponsors because we've not been holding the in-person events last year, which is a bit of a shame, but they're still there and they still help us throughout the year. They're there from a community point of view. They're there for our support as well. And, we're trying to kick off talks again because we all plan to get back into physical meetups. So we're planning what that's going to look like in the later stages of this year. But thanks to Kinetics, thank you to WP Engine, thank you to Plesk, thank you to WordPress as well, and thank you to Microsoft. So these are all of our sponsors for the WordPress Sydney meetup. And they contribute to the community, they contribute in value, in monetary value as well, and help and support and venues and food and drink and all that good stuff as well. So please visit their websites and yep, just give them a thanks. Give them a thanks for being our national sponsors. With that, Michelle. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, so we're talking about launch checklist. Let me just get rid of this WordPress thing. There we go. That's better. We don't need to branding all over the place because we all know who we are and what meetup that we are into. I wish I get rid of my name. How do I get rid of my name? I can't quite remember. Anyway, there. Show display name gone. Good. Okay, so WordPress launch checklist. So let's wind it back a little bit. And let's look at why we're talking about this subject, why I'm talking about this subject. So I want to share a little story with you. So I remember getting ready to launch my very first client website in 2007. That's right, 2007. So my job was to redesign and replace an existing website. It was written in .NET ASP, and it was a tree landscaping website. It was a very old website, hadn't been touched in a few years, and the customer didn't care what technology that I built the website in, as long as it was easy for them to update the website's content. So I had chosen WordPress, and at that time there were a lot of unknowns, because after all, I'd only really been creating websites with WordPress for about 6 months. So to say I was nervous and that something could go wrong was a little bit of an understatement. So I was uber stressful to do that. And launching a brand new website, that's pretty stressful. But replacing an existing website, that's doubly so, because you've got that added responsibility of things not going according to plan. And so what did I do? Well, I made myself a website launch checklist, and it's a checklist that I still use today, and it's continuously updated. But yeah, it's something that I found really helped me settle into this launch. It made it go well. It was a really good launch. Of course, I missed out on a few things because it was the first time I did it, but having that checklist there really did steady my nerves and help me through that entire process. But why? Why did this checklist help me? Okay, so let's have a look at the psychology of a checklist. And I know we're veering way off the point of WordPress, launching a WordPress website, but I think this is a little bit important. It's a little bit interesting as well. So when your brain is in scenario thought mapping mode, that's when your brain is looking at a problem and it starts to spin up lots of different scenarios, lots of different issues, lots of different solutions, and that causes stress and worry and uncertainty. And that's what I was feeling with my first WordPress launch to a live production server. Michelle, yes, you get a copy of the checklist at the end of this presentation. I'll give you a link. Thanks for asking. So things like questions that were going through my head were things like, what if the DNS doesn't update immediately? Oh my goodness. What if the links to the live website still map to the development site? What if Google can't index the new website at all? So things like that were running through my head, and these were the things I thought, well, I'll put down a checklist so that I can remember that and I can address that. So when people talk about project goals for like a website project, they're probably talking about significant items like the user interface, the design, the development, the training, and the delivery. But for me, small goals are equally as important, and especially if they are SMART. I hope everyone's heard of SMART, S-M-A-R-T. What that means, I'll just copy that down in the comments. Hopefully that comes out okay. So SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, S-M-A-R-T. And having a checklist with SMART items allows you to follow the items you can follow. It stops your brain from jumping into that scenario thought mapping mode, because you've got all these little goals. They're all specific, and they're measurable, so you can either do them or you don't. It's achievable, it's attainable. They're realistic, and they're time-bound. It's a checklist of one, do this, do that, do that. So having that little checklist there, it stops your brain going into this kind of all overload and just allows you to relax. And you're not thinking about all the issues because you've got your checklist done. You know it gets covered, and you know if you do that, then that's going to happen. So having a SMART, S-M-A-R-T checklist, I think is the best way to go. Now, the popular collaboration tool Trello, they've got a great article on how checklists can help you become more productive. I'll just copy that link in the comments, and I'll put all the comments, the links in the presentation in the comments afterwards as well, so you guys can all get at them, even in the replay. Yeah, so have a read of that article offline. And there's another one here as well about how the brain loves checklists. And that goes more into the psychology of how it actually works and how it relaxes you mentally and allows you to do a better job. And so checklists, I think they are an excellent thing to have when you need to follow a process and make sure that the outcome is consistent. And so I'm going to highlight some of the essential items to include and follow on your WordPress website launch checklist. Of course, there's hundreds of stuff that you probably have to do, but I think these ones are probably the top ones that I'm going to highlight out of my checklist. And yeah, just to answer your question, Michelle, I'm going to give you my entire checklist at the end of this talk, so bear with me. Okay, jumping into the first one, you probably won't see this at the top of many website launch checklists, but I think this one is uber critical. So this one is about setting your time zone. Now, GMT, or Greenwich Mean Time, is the standard against which all other clocks are measured. But in 1972, it's a bit of a history knowledge for you. In 1972, GMT was actually renamed to UTC, which is Coordinated Universal Time. And that's what WordPress sets its default time zone to when you install a new WordPress installation. So if you don't go and check that, if you don't go and change that, and if you're not in Britain, then you're basically running a different time zone. And considering so many different events on WordPress run on a schedule, the schedule being WP cron, think about emails, customer payments, invoices, etc. You need to make sure that that time zone is set accurately to where the customer is based, the country the customer is based in. So if that time zone is not set, then you're really setting your whole self up and the whole website up for failure. So I think that's one of my most important ones. Definitely check out your time zone and make sure it's in your right time for the country. The next one is proofreading all the content. I know it's a bit of a sucky job, and if you can pay a copywriter to do it, that's the best way forward, but it's got to be done. Nothing sucks more than reading something that's riddled with spelling and grammatical errors. It just really puts you off, and it puts that whole professional value into question. If somebody can't be bothered spending the time to correct their spelling, then you kind of think, well, can you really trust the offer that they're offering? Is it going to be good quality? Or maybe you just can't be bothered. Maybe spelling puts you off so much, you've had it, I'm going to go to another website. So if the client is yours, so if the website is yours, then yeah, definitely proofread all your pages. Otherwise, get if it's a client site, ideally, if it's not your forte, if it's not your expertise, explain to the client that you really get a copywriter to look over the content and proofread that. But make sure that you get the client to sign off on all the website content before you push that website live. So definitely get them to sign off and get them to check on all the copy. So we're talking about all the pages, but as well things like all the legals. So your copyright page, your privacy policy, your terms and conditions, make sure that they check that off as correct legally, and they've checked it with their legal team as well. So just make sure you get all that sort of copy signed off by the website. It's all proofread and it's all proper and it's all legal for that particular country and where they're trading in. Okay, so that's my second tip there, is proofread all the content. Another one from my list, another essential one, is setting up email delivery. Now, of course, you need to get notifications from your WordPress website. Some websites also need to send out emails to things like customers, subscribers, for their user base to do password resets, etc. So all the different scenarios, WordPress actually, once you've got a fully functioning WordPress website, then it will tend to send out quite a lot of email notifications. So, it would help, obviously, to make sure that the emails are not blacklisted, they don't end up in spam folders, or they don't disappear into the ether, which is actually more common than you would imagine. The number of people, emails that I get to say they want me to try and fix the emails that have gone missing from the WordPress website, it's fairly common. So what I like to do is I like to set up an email plugin. So the plugin of my choice is this one in the comments. It is WP Mail SMTP by WP Forms, and the link there to grab it on the WordPress.org repository. And now this is a great plugin. It allows you to configure the WordPress email. It gets rid of, it bypasses the whole PHP and server, and it allows you to send an email through a proper email system. Now that might be Gmail, G Suite, it could be SendGrid, it could be any of those other services out there. But it's a really important thing to do in your checklist is to make sure this is set up, because a lot of hosts, a lot of people just leave it for the web server and the WordPress website, the PHP email system and the website hosting company to send these emails through. And that can be really, really dangerous. So they could be blacklisted. As I say, they could be marked as spam, or they could there could be like problems delivering. I know there's a lot of issues with sending emails that don't have the proper sender policy framework put in place. And a lot of them from Microsoft's Outlook, it's Outlook 365, they just don't get there. They just disappear there. They get delivered somewhere, but nobody knows where they are. So a very important one in your email checklist is make sure that set up email delivery properly and that you're sending it through a proper SMTP mail host and not just relying on WordPress and the web server to send it through whatever systems the web host has put in place. Next up is check all website forms. You have no idea how many clients' websites I do audits for reviews, and I'll get to their contact form. I'll put in a test email, press return, and it'll just sit there spinning. Or it'll come up with, you need to fill out the mandatory telephone number, but there's no telephone field on the form. Or even worse, it says sent, and I go and check the client, and nope, they haven't got a sausage. So one of the essential checklist items for pre-launch is checking all your website forms. So make sure they're working, of course, make sure they're sending emails out and notifications to the proper people, and you might need to check with your clients on that to make sure they've received stuff. Make sure it's storing content in the database at the very, very least. You don't want to just put a form on the website that people can fill out and then that data just goes via email. You want to be able to store that information so you can action it later. Make sure that your required fields are set correctly and they're appropriate and they're visible. And that when you press submit, that you get the appropriate error message that tells people to prompt to fill them in. And also, I would highly suggest that you update your records in your CRM or your email marketing list. It's best to capture emails. If you're just starting out on your WordPress website journey, if this is a new website, then building an email list is uber important. It's one of the things where, if I had a time machine and went back to 2006 when I first started, I would be one of the first things I would do is start to build an email marketing list. So working forms, they're super essential to every business website. So go out there and make sure that all the forms are checked, even the simple ones. Make sure they're all working properly before you launch your website. Okay, next is installing a backup solution. Again, the amount of people who don't have backups is quite amazing in this day and age where you can have free plugins that back up to email or back up to Dropbox or Google Drive, and they don't cost anything. You still find businesses who have no backup solution, or they rely on the website hosting company's backup solution, only to find that they only keep like last month's worth, or they're going to charge them $300 to restore something. So things will go wrong with your website, and that is a given fact. Unfortunately, it's just the way of life. Sometimes they go severely wrong, and your only recourse will be to restore from a backup. So ensure that you have a reliable backup and restore solution in place. That's either from your web hosting company, if they're often a good one, or by using an external backup plugin. So if you use an external backup plugin, then I recommend using Updraft Plus or Blog Vault. Those are two really, really good options for there. It's well worth paying for a backup solution as well, just to make sure you get the best performance from that. And check out my little article. It's a couple of years out of date, or at least a year and a half out of date, but it still covers the major WordPress plugins that are out there. Gives them a bit of a review, tells them how much it costs and what you get for the pro and basic features. But definitely install a backup solution, and that should be uber important on your pre-launch checklist. A few extra people coming in are waving to me. So Kelly and Sunny Parramatta. Parramatta's not far from here, and it's not sunny here, so good luck to you. Daniel, Joey J, thanks for joining us. Ra as well. Oh, Ray's from Summerhill. Cool. We've got Summerhill, we've got Marrickville, we've got all the good places. Awesome. Thanks for joining me. Okay, jumping in. Secure your site with HTTPS. Now, I've talked about HTTPS, and that's a secure version of HTTP quite a lot at different meetups. So if this is your first time, then it's a subject that I do cover an awful lot. So make sure that you secure your entire website with an SSL certificate. This should be top on your pre-launch checklist. Now, your web host, this should offer you a free SSL certificate. Don't pay for one. Never ever pay for one. A free SSL certificate does exactly the same thing as a paid SSL certificate. It just encrypts traffic, and that's all it does. So definitely get a free one. Make sure your web host doesn't charge you for that. And ensure your whole website redirects from HTTP to HTTPS. And the best way you can do that is go into your WordPress settings and your general, and make sure those two URL fields are set to HTTPS and not HTTP. And if you've got an existing website, then you might want to set up something in htaccess to redirect all your website traffic from HTTP to HTTPS and make sure nothing's left there. But also in your checklist, you want to check your database because what WordPress does, when WordPress stores URLs in the database, it doesn't store relative URLs, it stores the full path to URL. So if you've got an existing site there, or if you're been developing on local with HTTP, or you've been developing on a staging site that doesn't have HTTPS, then all those URLs you've been creating and mapping, they'll all be stored as HTTP and not HTTPS. So you will need to use an appropriate tool like WP CLI or something like Velvet Blue's Update URL plugin, and that will allow you to search and replace the database either on the command line. That's what WP CLI is for. Or if you're not a command line jockey, then use that plugin, and that allows you to search and replace in the database for HTTP to HTTPS URLs. So generally, definitely make sure you've got your whole website secured. It's important for e-commerce. It's important for SEO as well. Google has said it's one of the it's a significant SEO ranking factor. Okay. Another one that is top on my checklist is optimizing all your images. So website speed is your friend, and make sure that your pages are as fast as they can be. And probably the slowest factor for most website pages is going to be the loading of graphics. Make sure you optimize all your graphics for physical size, on-screen size, as well as file size as well. And yes, I have had clients sorry, just let me get rid of some dodgy comments there. So I've had clients who upload images directly to the WordPress website using from their camera, from their phone, and they're like 2,000 or 5,000 wide, big. So yeah, definitely make sure you optimize them for your width of your website. There's no point having a 2,000 span photo if you've only got like an 1140 width for your website. Yeah, so make sure you're optimized for size, as in physical size and file size as well. You can optimize all your images before you put them up on the live website. So if you're developing on local, that's pretty easy. You can run through all your WP content uploads folder and just optimize all the images folder by folder there. Or if you've got a development server or staging server, It's fairly easy just to go into your file manager, zip up your wp-content/uploads folder, download them to local, unzip them, and then run a file optimization on those, zip them up, and then just upload them and extract them back on again. It's not a lot of work to do, and these file optimizers, they generally just run in the background, on your PC or on your Mac, and they just go through all the images for that. The one that I use, I'm a PC user. I don't have a Mac URL, sorry. But I use one called File Optimizer, Optimize with a Z, so it must be American, I think. And it's pretty good. It does PNGs, it does JPEGs, and it squashes them down quite significantly. So it removes things like geotagging and all like the metadata that big cameras store, like ISO and shutter speed and all that sort of stuff. So it gets rid of all that stuff and just leaves the bare image, which is fantastic. Another thing as well in this optimization field is maybe to consider using something called WebP images, especially on landing pages and your home page. Now, I'm going to do a WP Quickie. I do WP Quickies on every Thursday at 1 p.m. Sydney time, and it's just 30 minutes of WordPress tips and tricks. So I'm going to be covering WebPs this Thursday. So if you want to join in and find out a little bit more about what they are, that'll be a good place to come and get some information. Now, WebP images, just briefly, they have a significantly smaller size than JPEGs and PNGs, which is good because it means that your page is going to load a lot faster. But there's a few things to note. WordPress by default, the media manager, it does not support WebP. So if you try and drag a WebP on there, it'll say unrecognized file format. So you're going to need a plugin to use that, and I'll cover that in the WP Quickies talk on Thursday. And also note as well, probably best not to convert all your images, certainly for blog and post images to WebP, because there's still a few platforms out there that don't support the WebP images as thumbnails for your shared blog articles. The big one being LinkedIn. So for example, if you set your featured image to be a WebP in one of your articles, and then you go and share that on LinkedIn, you won't get any graphic preview, graphic thumbnail, because it doesn't recognize WebPs in that format. So definitely a lot to consider about optimizing your images. It's not just an easy thing to do. Put some thought, put some effort into that, but certainly a critical thing on checklists. Okay, this is slide 13 of 20, so we are getting there. Check for broken links. I couldn't find a good graphic for that, so I just threw some plates on the floor and took a photo. Only joking. So if your website visitors, if they're frequently getting 404 error pages, that's going to annoy them, and it's also going to erode trust in your website, and that could make the difference between somebody purchasing a product or service and making you money. Google, they're also going to penalize your search engine rankings, your overall rankings, if you generate a lot of 404 errors, because that's not a good user experience, and that's what they're all about. So please check your site for broken links using an online tool like Screaming Frog, SEMrush, or Dr. Link Checker. I'll just copy them in the comments below so you've got an idea of what I'm talking about. I use Screaming Frog. Personally, I just run that on my PC, and it takes about 10-15 minutes because my website's pretty large. But yeah, it looks for all errors, and you can index them by 404 errors to see exactly which links are breaking. One thing I will say is please do not use the Broken Link Checker plugin, as it uses a whole heap of server resources, and it is continuously going down links all the time, trying to map all the different links between your website. And it's going to use up all your server resources, and worst case scenario, it's going to crash your website. So don't use the Broken Link Checker plugin, please. Use an external online service like one of the ones I've just dropped in there. Redirecting URLs. Now, this might not apply if your website is brand new. So if you're just pushing up a brand new website that's never been on the internet, then redirecting URLs is probably not something that you're going to need to do. But it's going to be uber critical when you are replacing an existing website. So again, this is a critical factor, an essential factor in my website launch checklist. So if you are replacing an existing website, you've got to ensure that the old URLs are redirected to the new URLs, or you risk losing all that site-wide SEO juice, and your rankings for that website will drop dramatically. Now, if that happens on your personal website, that's a bad thing, and you could end up losing money. If you lose a client's SEO rankings, then you are in big trouble, and you could be held liable for loss in profits and loss of business. So definitely a really critical and important checklist thing here. So many of the SEO plugins many of the popular SEO plugins, they offer a premium redirection feature, or you can use a single plugin just like redirection, and that's what it's called in the repository, and I'll copy the link down below in the comments. So it's just called redirection. It's one of the most popular WordPress plugins for doing this, and it just does a simple mapping from old URL to new URL, and you can specify the type, but normally it's just 301 mapping. And that tells Google that this URL has temporarily been moved to this new location. And if you set that up properly, then Google will not penalize your SEO points and your rankings, and everything will just stay in place and kind of move over to the new URL structure nicely. So definitely a super, super important checklist item, redirecting URLs for replacing existing websites. And my old favorite is installing a firewall. I know there's a lot of web posts say that their systems are nice and secure and you don't really need to install a firewall, but I think you do. I think it gives you a lot of different options, a lot of good security options, as well as just keeping hackers out. So the one that I would recommend is WordFence. It's the WordFence plugin. It's the one that I use. It's the one that I recommend to all my clients. I had a look at the code in the back end. I've updated some tickets as well for the code base. So I know what it does. I know it works really well, and it's a great solution for a firewall, a software firewall for WordPress. So basically, it does lots and lots of things, but basically what you're wanting out of a firewall is to enhance your website security by things like scanning for malware, responding to brute force attacks. So that's, for example, locking IP address of bots that are trying to hammer the website. Enable multi-factor authentication for logins. So that's where you're logging into your WordPress, use your username and password, but then you use something like a Google Authenticator on your phone to generate an additional code to pop in at login time. And that stops the hackers getting in because they don't have access to your mobile phone. So it's that extra layer of security that gives you. So I have that enabled on all client websites for admins for sure. And as well, useful little features like forcing secure passwords for registered users. So if you are allowing people to create an account on your website, so you might have a WooCommerce store, e-commerce store, you might have a membership site that allows registrations. You want to make sure that the people who are registering, they're also creating secure passwords, because there's no point in protecting your admin stuff if you're letting everyone else have passwords like 123 or password 123 or their soccer name or something like that. So definitely, I recommend installing a firewall as one of your essential checklist items. Next up is setting up Google Analytics and Google Search Console. Now, over the past few years, clients have got pretty good at this in general. Most companies I come to already have at least Google Analytics set up on their websites, but I still come across a few companies who go it blind and they don't have Google Analytics or Google Search Console installed or linked to their website. Therefore, they're missing out on all this stuff, all this good data, all this free data that they can use to pinpoint their customers and really enhance their user experience and their overall business as well. So as the name suggests, I'm sure everyone knows what Google Analytics is, but Google Analytics, it shows you data points about the performance of your website. Data points such as who's viewing your website, from which location, which country they're viewing the website, on which device they're viewing the website, and which search terms they're using to find the website and to find all the different pages in your website. So Google Analytics is very data driven. whereas the Google Search Console that allows you to improve and optimize your website. So the two are very different, but they run to complement each other. So the Google Search Console, if you haven't got it already connected, definitely you should have it, and it definitely needs to be part of this essential checklist guide. The Google Search Console, it provides data about website technical errors that can prevent indexing, mobile usability errors, so it can tell you if like things are outside the normal view frame of mobile, and again that's going to be bad for your ranking. Information on keyword queries, so all the search terms that people are using, and data on those keywords as well. Which sites are linking back to your website, so you can have a look at backlinks, and as well as like external versus internal links as well. So Google Search Console provides a wealth of information about your operation of your website that you won't get anywhere else. So you can connect both these services using an SEO plugin such as SEO Press or Yoast SEO. There's separate plugins to do these separately, but it's a segue into the next topic, which is SEO plugins. So I'd always recommend you have an SEO plugin for your website, and it should be one of your checklist options. And again, if you're installing a really good SEO plugin, then it's going to allow you to connect to Google Analytics. It's going to allow you to connect to Google Search Console as well, and that should be on your checklist for that. Morris is asking a question on search. If you have Google Analytics and Search Console, is it necessary to install an analytics plugin because you can see the data on the Google site? Morris, that's a great question. So off the top of my head, I'm thinking about Jetpack. So a lot of people like Jetpack, a lot of people don't like Jetpack. So one of the initial features of Jetpack before it grew into this huge big feature set was that it stored or recorded your website visitors, things like your favorite pages, your top pages, and then stored that data on your desktop. Now you can also get plugins that will store your Google Analytics data and show them on your WordPress dashboard. Look, for me, it's handy to be able to see that stuff for a first glance, but I think the performance hit that it takes measuring and gathering all that data and putting it into your WordPress website, I think that's unnecessary. I think it's a better experience, and you get a better overview of what the tool is if you're going directly into Google Analytics and if you're going directly into Search Engine Console. So my answer to you, Morris, would be no, it's not necessary to install a separate analytics plugin. And in fact, I think it's better if you don't, and you visit Google Analytics and you visit Google Search Console as part of your monthly, weekly updates, maintenance, just to check out what's going on for that. And so thanks for that. That's a great question. Thank you, Morris. Of course, in general, SEO plugins, you need to ensure that your WordPress website is indexable by search engine bots. And I think I have this really, really high up in my checklist. You'll be able to see for yourself when you download it. But make sure you go into the WordPress settings and reading, and make sure that the discourage search engines from indexing the site is unchecked. I've had lots of clients in the past who they've moved this new website up into production, and then they've went back a month later to check on the SEO results, and what they see in the graph from Google is like all this lovely stuff, and then it goes zoom, and then flat lines across the bottom. And the first thing I check is, there's two things I check. One is, is the website Google Analytics API code registered? Yes or no? And then I go to settings and reading and check to see if this discourage search engines from indexing the site is unchecked. And there's quite a few times that I've been in there and that's got that little tick against it. And the reason is when the developer or designer has been creating this website and they've got it on a separate website like a staging or development, showing off to the client, then of course they don't want this development site being indexed by Google. So they come in here, they come into settings reading, and they check that little box. And then when Google comes along, it says, oh, no, I'm not going to index this site. And then because they don't have this as part of their website launch checklist, they forget to uncheck it. Google comes along to the production website, looks and goes, no, I'll just miss that website. Nightmare, absolute nightmare, because it can take just a month to absolutely decimate all your SEO, but it can take months, lots of months to then regain all that ranking stuff. So it's definitely something you really want to make sure that you don't have that checked. Okay, so please strongly consider installing a dedicated SEO plugin. So the SEO plugin of my choice, I used to use Yoast, and in fact, I've written an article on my website about the complete configuration guide to Yoast Premium, I think it is, and it goes step by step. But I've actually moved away from Yoast, and I've moved towards SEO Press. It was recommended by a colleague, by one of the other organizers for the WordPress Sydney meetup, James Cardamy. He used SEO Press and he introduced it to me, and I had a look at it, and I fell in love with it. I think it is fantastic. The interface is easier to use than Yoast, in my opinion, and its price point is also more better than Yoast. So if you're going to use Yoast with things like local SEO and WooCommerce as well, then you need to buy extra plugins for Yoast, and that then adds to the price. Whereas SEO Press, if you buy their Pro license, which is cheaper anyway, it includes all that stuff. Plus, they've got a better license for multiple sites as well, or I think they do a lifetime value as well. So what I'm basically saying is my favorite SEO plugin is SEO Press, but that's your choice. But regardless of which one you think is the best, having this, installing a plugin as part of your checklist, I think is uber critical. And being able to show the client how to change site title, meta titles, keywords, excerpt, and things like that is going to be beneficial for them, and beneficial for you, and beneficial for the website when you go and launch that. Rank Math, yes, Rank Math is also a popular choice. Thanks, Stefan. We are getting there. We're almost getting there. Though, in fact, this is the end. So additional checks. So that was my rundown of some of the, what I think is the essential checks from my essential checklist. So I've kind of been cherry picking the ones that I think are the most important, but of course they all are. And I've got heaps of others in the checklist. Of course, there's additional stuff, and I'll paste the link down here. So you can go and download that guide. I think there's about, just off the top of my head, it's a Google Sheet, so you need to copy that to Google Drive or download it as an Excel spreadsheet or PDF or something. There's 3 tabs at the bottom. There's a pre-check launch list. There's a launch list, so when you're actually doing it, and there's a post launch checklist as well. I think the pre-launch checklist is about 60 items long, so there's a lot of stuff there. And you might have additional ones that you want to add to that. So please copy that list and modify it for your use. It's done me well over the past few years. It's caught many things that I think other people don't catch when they're just kind of doing it off the cuff. And just having that checklist there just allows me to relax. It allows me to be more productive. It allows the whole process of launching a website to be a lot quicker, because you're not worrying, you're not scurrying around. You know exactly what you're doing. This step, then that step, then this step. Download that. Let me know what you think about that as well. If you can't access it, also just drop me a note in the comments, and I'll send you a link to that. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was useful for you, just to highlight some of the really top ones. I'm going to cycle through. I don't think there were too many questions, but I'll cycle through and see if I can pick out some of the questions. And if you have any more, then drop them down in the comments. I've done Morris's one on Google Analytics and Search Console. Joey J. There's no dumb questions, Joey. I love questions, whatever they are. Does Google prefer websites that are using Google Analytics, Search Console, etc. when it comes to search ranking? That's an interesting question. I don't really think I don't know. I'll put that on the top of my head. I don't know, but I wouldn't think that your website being linked to Google Analytics and being linked to Google Search Engine would be a ranking factor or preference in the ranking factor or overall SEO for your website. I just think they're absolutely critical, because without them, you're not going to get all that information about your customers, where they're coming from, what they're doing. And you're not going to be able to find out all the issues, all the errors in your website until it comes to at the time where Google start, penalizing your website with those issues. For example, I mentioned the mobile one. It's quite good. Something that I see quite often is when a website is launched, and one of the pages or some elements are off to the side. So when users are scrolling through it, they can't see or they can't press a button to submit a form. That's really bad, and Google's going to penalize you for that because that's a useless page. But their Search Console, that will highlight that as a mobile issue. It'll send you an email, so it gives you the chance to go in, correct it, and actually tell Google, yeah, I've fixed that problem. And they'll go away and have a look at that and then make sure that's not it's not going to penalize your website. However, if you're not linked to them and you don't know about that issue, excuse me, then yeah, just out of the blue, you're going to be wondering why your website rankings are starting to go lower. And again, you're not going to have any information to back up what's happening. And that's going to put you in a very bad place. So to summarize, no, I don't think Google prefers if you're using Google Analytics or the Search Console. I just think it's something that you need to have in place. But thanks for that question. That's a good question, Joy. Let's see. Yeah, so Stephen, you were asking about rank math. Personally, I've not had a look at rank math, but certainly when I've been doing talks about SEO in general, a lot of people have been saying that rank math is really, really good. So I think it's something I will have a look at some point when I get time. But it certainly has a thumbs up from, try and get that in frame. There we go, thumbs up from a lot of users. So it seems to be one that's gathering a lot of popularity. Ra asks, do you have tips on the best way to change from Yoast to SEO Press? Yes, I do. You install SEO Press, you go into the migrations tab and you press migrate from Yoast SEO and it does it all for you. It's fantastic. In fact, it's got one for, is it all-in-one SEO? I think that's one of the other big plugins as well. But basically it's got an importer for the popular top 5 SEO plugins. So if you want to migrate from something to SEO Press, then you check their website and it tells you which migration tools, but definitely Yoast, because I migrated all my websites from Yoast to SEO Press, and I used their migration tool, and yeah, that worked fantastic. I had absolutely no problems. It was amazeballs. It was amazeballs, absolutely. Louise says, thank you so much. I love a Trello checklist. I should do it in Trello as well. Yeah, so it's a Google spreadsheet. It's a Google sheet, just because I love doing Google things. I do have Trellos. So yeah, I might convert it to a Trello checklist. But what you'll see if you download, I've got a column that's got like a check on it. So for me visually, when it's unchecked, it's red. And when it's checked, it's green. So just from a visual point of view, I can scan right down the list. I know exactly where I am and what I need to do. Because sometimes you'll find that you might do launch checks in a particular order, and they might not be in the order of my spreadsheet. Or, for example, there might be a different type of website that you have to do some checks before others. But having the red and green there, the kind of traffic light system, allows me to do like a quick glance to see, is that done? Is it still to do? Whereas I think you kind of lose that a little bit in Trello. So Trello is good for kind of tasks and completion dates and stuff. But I just find this Google spreadsheet is easier for like a simple, do type of checklist. But yeah, great question. Thank you. I do love Trello. Oh yeah, she got it. No, you got that. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, I think that's it. I'm just having a quick look. I've got my iPad next to me, which is real-time comments, and I can't see any more coming in. And I don't want to waffle on for the sake of waffling on. So I just want to keep tonight simple. The first one to come back in 2021. Let's see. Okay, someone does have a question on Spam Sussel. Just wait. It takes a few seconds to sync between what I can see here and what I can see in the StreamYard broadcast. But basically, Stephen is asking, oh, is that coming up? There we go. Got it now. Do you do anything specific for spam prevention on forms? I do. So I always recommend Gravity Forms to clients. I love Gravity Forms. I got it when it first came out. I know it inside and out, which is why I use it. And the developer license is not costly if you figure that into all your client costs. And it has something called a honeypot. So I put that on all my forms, and 99.9% of the times, and for my client websites, they have no issue with spam. What a honeypot is it's a field that is included into the form, but you can't see it visually. So it's a hidden field, and the whole idea is that when bots come along to a form, they basically just see all the fields and just fill them in with all the spam, and they submit it. And the idea behind the honeypot is if it has been filled in, then chances are it's probably a bot that's filled it in, or it will have been a bot that's filled it in because a human can't, because they can't see that field. And then you know that that's a spam and it can get disregarded. So honeypots on Gravity Forms is my preferred anti-spam method. I don't particularly like reCAPTCHAs because they're not very accessible. So if you ever try to listen to a reCAPTCHA on a screen reader, it's terrible. The Google one is slightly better, but still it's very visually orientated. So, you know, it shows you the pictures, like it says, it maybe got like 9 pictures. It says, click all the pictures that you can see a boat in, or a mountain, or a traffic light. Again, that and accessibility. So people who are visually impaired, it doesn't work very well. So I'm not a huge fan of reCAPTCHAs for preventing spam. I do prefer the honeypot method, and that's what Gravity Forms gives me. So hopefully that answers that question. And I'm going to do a roundup for tonight. I think that's us done, which is great. Just a quick plug for next month. So we have setting up WooCommerce for first-time shop owners. So that is March the 29th. So we're going to try to do the last Monday of every month. And that's from February all the way to November. And we take December and January off for a little bit of a break. But yeah, last Monday of the month. So the next one, March the 29th, 6 p.m. Sydney time. So the next one will be GMT plus 10, because the UK daylight savings kicks in a week before us, or 2 weeks before us. So if you are interested in setting up a WooCommerce shop, if you haven't done one before, or you're just kind of in the experimental stage of poking around with it, then I'm going to go through what you need to do to set up your shop for the first time. So going through the WooCommerce interface, showing you all the admin pages, showing you all the setup, showing you which ones to check and which ones to set up for the first time. So if you haven't seen WooCommerce before, that would probably be a good first glimpse for you. So I hope you will join me then. And I don't have a slide, but you know, if you're interested in lunchtime, if you're in Australia, I do my lunchtime WP quickies on every Thursday at 1 p.m. Sydney time, just for 30 minutes. So you can join me over lunchtime for those. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your brilliant questions. Thank you for spending your evening with me, your Monday evening with me. And I will see you guys again next month for the big WordPress meetup. Again, so ciao and catch you next month.